Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Shannon with Raising a Blessing blog, and this is video number 3 in our Crafty Christmas Gifts on a Budget series. And I know you saw from the intro to the video that today we are talking about personalizing or customizing cutting boards as gifts. And I am particularly excited about this idea because I promised you guys that I would roll out some ideas that were not only budget friendly, but also beginner friendly. And what excites me the most about this is that it's a gorgeous gift that I would love to give to anyone on my list. But it's also the first time that I have ever made one of these personalized or customized cutting boards. So when I say it's beginner friendly, I feel very confident that if I can do this as my first attempt, I promise you guys, you can do it too. So this one specifically is wood burned, and I think it turned out just gorgeous. But as you saw in the intro to the video, the other one that we're going to be discussing today is this one. And this is how to take a handwritten recipe. This is my mother-in-law's handwriting and her recipe, and how to put it on a cutting board in order to personalize it. So we're going to be going over how to accomplish both of these looks. But before I do, I wanted to talk a little bit about how budget friendly this idea is. Including the cost of the board itself, I was able to complete this gift for less than $5. The same thing can be said about this one. I was able to complete this one for less than $5. And I know what you're thinking. How are you able to complete this for less than $5? Well, I'm going to give you some of my tips and hints on how I did that. But at the same time, I do understand that some of it's going to depend on what resources you have access to and what tools you already have. So like, for instance, if you follow my Facebook page, you know that I accidentally deleted some of the tutorials for this video and had to basically start over again. When I did that, I went by the thrift store to pick up another cutting board in order to recreate some of my tutorials. And this cutting board cost me $6. So some of it's going to depend on what you have access to, but either way, this is a gift that you can really accomplish for very little. It will stretch the dollar, and yet it will give you a gift to give that is absolutely gorgeous and personal. So because we're going over 2 different customization options in this video, I have broken the video down into different parts. And what I'm going to do is, if you hang with me right here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I picked these up and how I prepped them for customization. But after I do that, I'm going to give you some information on where you can fast forward to in the video to get specifically to the tutorial on whatever customization you're looking for. So hang with me the first few minutes, and then I'll give you some information on where to fast forward to. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And if you want to, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, give me a like, so that you can continue to see these videos as they roll out. But that's all I'll say for now. Let's get started so you kind of know how to accomplish this look for the person on your list. And have a great day. Here we go.
In order to keep this Christmas gift as budget-friendly as possible, I started out by shopping for my cutting boards secondhand. I was absolutely thrilled when I found these 2 beautiful boards for only $2.99 each at my local thrift store. Although they were in somewhat rough condition, I could tell that they still had a lot of life left in them, and with just a little bit of work and TLC, I thought that they would be absolutely perfect for this project. Because of the condition that the boards were in, I started out by sanding them down. For this, I used my quarter sheet sander and started out with 60 grit sandpaper to really bite in and get some of those deep cuts out of the board. From there, I moved on to 100 grit sandpaper to really smooth it out and give it a nice finish. Here are a few extra tips for this step. Always sand in the same direction as the grain of wood and try to avoid any swirling while you sand. Dust off your cutting board thoroughly before you move on to the next step. Assuming that your board is sanded and thoroughly dusted off, you're ready to customize. Option 1 is the beautiful wood-burned personalization option. If this is the option you would like to use for your gift, stay right here and we're going to be starting that tutorial in just a moment. Option 2 is applying a handwritten recipe to your cutting board. If you're interested in option number 2, here is where you can fast forward to our video to start that tutorial. Once you have visited the tutorial of your choice, please take a moment and drop by the end of our video for extra personalization options. Option number 1, wood-burned personalized cutting board. This option can be broken down into 3 easy steps: creating your stencil, wood burning your board, and conditioning your board. So let's get started. Step number 1, creating your stencil. There are 3 easy ways to make a stencil for your board. Freehand writing is an obvious option, but definitely not a skill that I have up my sleeve. If you have a vinyl cutter such as a Cricut or Silhouette, then you're likely no stranger to making your own stencils such as the one I have pictured here. But if you don't have a vinyl cutter or freehand skills, I do have a third option that only requires access to a plain old home printer and either wax paper, a page protector, or a laminating sheet. And trust me, it works. I've provided a step-by-step tutorial on how to make your own stencil. So if you need option number 3, just hang tight and I'll provide more information right after we go over step 2 and step 3. Step 2, wood burning. Now that your personalization stencil area is outlined on your cutting board in some form, you're ready to begin the wood burning process. Now, I picked up my wood burning tool at Walmart for under $20 and I've used it quite regularly for many projects, but you can also find them on Amazon and at other craft stores. Please be very cautious when you're using these because they do get extremely hot and you'll want to keep them out of reach of children and pets. Always follow the manufacturer instructions. I also find it helpful to practice on another piece of wood before I start my final project so that I can really learn how my wood burning tool works. Step 3, and this is truly an optional step, but I love to add a little butcher block conditioner to really deepen the color and add some shine. And there you have it, a beautiful personalized cutting board for someone special on your list. Now from here, we're going to be moving straight into the tutorial for how to make your own stencil, as we mentioned a bit earlier. But if you're interested in jumping forward to the tutorial for option number 2, the handwritten recipe cutting board, you could fast forward to this spot in the video. Please don't forget to drop by the end of our video for some additional fun customization options.
All right, everybody, if you stuck around in order to learn how to make a reverse image transfer stencil, we're going to start that tutorial right now. Trust me, guys, it's very, very simple and easy to do, but I would go ahead and hit the pause button right now. Grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen or pencil so that you can jot down some notes. It's super easy, but having those notes on the step-by-step might be a little bit helpful as you're going through the process yourself. Now, the 2 programs that I find the easiest to use are Microsoft Word and Paint. But if those 2 programs don't work for you, there are some other tutorials out there that you can look up and find. You could do a quick Google search and it'll help you out with that. But if you're going to use Microsoft Word and Paint, we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I would do is change my layout, to landscape. It's an easier layout to work with, especially since we're going to be doing stuff that takes up a little bit of room. The next thing you do is go ahead and type out the name that you want to use on your board. So you'll see on one of my boards, I use this name, but for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and use my blog name. All right, so there we have it. Okay, so once you've typed out your name, the next thing you're going to need to do is click out of it in order to get rid of that cursor, but still be able to fully see it. So a lot of times when I'm having trouble doing this, I'll open up 2 different windows. You'll see here I have Paint open on the right side of my screen and I have Word open on the left. So if you have 2 programs open like that on your screen at the same time, you could click out of one and it'll usually get rid of that cursor there. From there, you want to hit your Print Screen button. So hit Print Screen, and then you're going to open up your Paint. So I already have it open. I'm going to expand it. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit Paste. Now, if you're new to doing Print Screen or Paint, you're going to notice that it literally pasted my entire screen on there. It's real easy to clean this up. All you got to do is left click on your mouse to drag it up to the top. I'm going to move this over so I can see it a little better. Then I drag down to the bottom and you'll see this little box down here. Just start pulling it up till you get it nice and clean. Then I'm going to go over to the right and grab it, bring it over until what I end up with is a nice and clean image of the writing that I plan to put on my board. So from here, because I just like to do this in case something goes wrong, I'll go up here and I'll say File, Save As, and I'll save it as the file that I'm trying to make. But this is where the magic happens. If you choose to save it, great. If not, that's fine too. It won't hurt anything. Next step, you're going to go up here to rotate and you're going to say flip horizontal, and boom, there's the magic. You've just created a reverse or mirror image that you'll be using to create your stencil. It's truly that easy. So from there, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say File, Save As. And you can see I actually already saved it. I save it under the same name, but then I say Flipped. Then I'm going to hop back out to my Word document. I'm going to delete my initial writing, and I'm going to say Insert a picture from this device, and I'm going to come over here to my flipped file and insert it.
Once you've loaded your image into Microsoft Word, you're ready to resize it as needed and then print. As mentioned before, all you need in order to print this stencil is a regular home printer, wax or parchment paper, page protectors, or laminating sheets. Now, honestly, I've used all of these options and they work, but wax paper is somewhat challenging to get it to feed through your home printer. So my favorite option are laminating sheets. I take the laminating sheet and I cut it down to an 8.5 by 11, the same size as paper, and I feed it through my printer shiny or smooth side up so that the ink is printed on the smoothest surface. 2 quick tips when it comes to printing. Number 1, don't pull on your paper as it feeds out of the printer because it could cause smudging. And number 2, make sure you don't print until you're ready to transfer that ink to the wood because you'll need to be working rather quickly while the ink is still wet. The next step is actually transferring your printed stencil to your cutting board.
All right, friends. So once you have printed out the transfer, your ink's going to be super wet, so you're going to want to work as quickly as possible. As you can see, when it prints out, it should be a mirror image or upside down, which means that when you put it ink down, it should be right side up. So the main thing is once you set this down on your board, you don't want to move it at all because any moving will smudge the ink. So you're going to want to really get an idea of where you want to set it down and then very carefully set it down without letting it move. Now, I actually didn't get it perfectly set down without smudging. So if you have that issue, you can pull it back up, sand it off, and restart. But this is the main step that I would recommend. I know I have to work quickly, so I have tape down my legs, and I immediately tape this down. This is the step that I skipped and had to redo one of my cutting boards 3 times. The first time I didn't tape it down at all and the ink smudged pretty bad. The second time I only taped the corners and the ink smudged again. So the third time I learned my lesson and really, really taped it down. Now from here you can use a squeegee to really push that ink in, or since I'm just using this as a stencil, what I'm really going to do is just use my finger, and you'll want to use your other hand to really hold it in place so that it doesn't move and smear the ink. Using it as a stencil does give you a little bit more leeway than the other option we're going to be looking at, which is when you use it to put a recipe board down. But even as a stencil, really, I didn't get hardly any smudging on this. But like I said, if you get smudging and you want to go back, all you have to do is lift it back off, sand back down, and try again. So I'm just going to push it in a little bit, make sure I get a nice, good stencil. And once I think I've done a good enough job, I'm going to carefully lift it up. And I'm ready to wood burn. Got a nice good stencil there that I will be able to use for my wood burning.
All right, friends, so there's your quick and easy tutorial on how to create your own stencil for the wood burning option. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comment section below. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move into option number 2, which is personalizing a cutting board by transferring a handwritten recipe. If you're just now joining us because you fast forwarded through the other tutorials, welcome. So option number 2 is pretty simple and straightforward and actually only requires a couple of steps. So we're assuming that you have already sanded and cleaned off your board in preparation for customization. Step 1, we will scan and mirror your recipe. Step 2, we're going to print it out. Step 3, we're going to transfer the ink of the recipe onto the board. And step 4, we are going to seal the board. So if you have any questions throughout this process, just drop them down in the comments below, but let's get started. All right, guys, so we're going to get started on option number 2, which is the handwritten recipe cutting board. This is a beautiful option if you have some handwritten recipes sitting around that you want to turn into a personalized gift. I happen to have several handwritten recipes sitting around because a few years ago we did a family cookbook, and I had my mom and my mother-in-law write several of their recipes in their handwriting so that I would have them years later. And one of my favorite ones is this one, which is actually Pao, which is Chinese steamed buns. And it's a favorite of my husband's because it's my mother-in-law's recipe. And the first thing you need to do when you pick the recipe you want to use is scan it as an image file. So you're going to need a JPEG or a PNG. If you have a home scanner, that's pretty easy to accomplish. But if you don't, you can run down to Walmart, and in their photo section, they still have scanners. You can ask someone there to help you out if you need, but you can scan it in and save it to a CD as a JPEG or a PNG, some kind of image file, and bring that CD home and plop it right into your computer. Then you'll have a file that looks similar to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is open this up in Paint, because I want to clean it up. So drop down to open with and cross over to Paint, and it's gonna open it up like this. Now you'll notice, because I scanned in a recipe, that I've got a lot of white space above and below. So I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna hit select, and I'm gonna grab my recipe and I'm gonna drag it up just like this. Because my goal is to really clean up that image to where the only thing that I'm looking at is the recipe itself. Now, this is also something that's good to do if the recipe you have is not necessarily clean. It has designs or decor that you don't want as part of your transfer, or maybe it has stains, which I think are totally charming. But if it's something that you want to remove before you transfer it to the wood, this would be the place to do it. Then you come up here when you're ready to go and hit this rotate button. One of the options under rotate is to flip horizontal. And once you flip horizontal, you've created a mirror image of that file, which means you're ready to go for printing. So that's how easy it is to get a mirror image so that you're ready to go as far as printing. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and say File, Save As. And I'm going to save it with the same name, but I'm going to call it Flipped, so I know which one I'm working with. Make sure that down here under the type of file, you're either choosing a JPEG or a PNG, something that's an image file, and then you can hit save. The next thing you're going to want to do is open up your Microsoft Word. Make sure that as far as the layout, you have it in landscape orientation, because you're going to want as much space as possible to work with. You're going to go up here to insert a picture from this device, and I'm going to grab my flipped file. So now you have your flipped file there, and you can really play with the sizing now to get it as big or as small as you want for your cutting board. Once you've done that step, you are ready to move on to printing. As mentioned earlier, the only thing that you need in order to print this transfer is a regular old home printer and wax paper, page protectors, or laminating sheets. Now, all three of these options will work, but wax paper creates a bit of a challenge when trying to get it to feed through your printer. My preference is actually laminating sheets, and I cut it down to an 8.5 by 11, the same size as a sheet of paper. When you feed it through the printer, feed it shiny or smooth side up so that the ink is printing on the smoothest surface. Two quick tips here. You don't want to pull the paper as it's coming out of the printer because it will smudge or smear very easily. Number two, you don't want to print until you are ready to put the transfer on your board, because once you print it, you'll need to transfer that ink onto the board as quickly as possible. Now, I have a quick tutorial video that I'm going to share, but I also wanted to go over the tips just real quickly so that you kind of have a jump start. Once you have printed your transfer, work quickly and carefully to place the transfer ink side down and immediately tape and secure it in place. This will prevent any smudging. Once you have it secured, you can use a squeegee or your fingers to press the paper against the wood. This is going to transfer the ink from the paper to the actual cutting board. Be cautious and work slowly when you lift the paper off of the cutting board in order to prevent any smudging.
Okay guys, so here's a quick video tutorial of the exact steps that we just went over in the previous slides. So you're going to see that my printout, if I'm holding it like this, it looks upside down. This is ink side up. I'm about to flip it over and lay it on my board. You'll need to work quickly so the ink doesn't dry, but do know that once you set it down, you do not want to move it at all, because any movement whatsoever will cause smudging. That is the most challenging part of this project, is getting it set down without any movement at all. So once you set it down, because I know this is going to be something that I have to work quickly, I have tape down my legs already, and I work very fast to tape down my pieces. Now, one of my boards I had to do 3 times because I skipped this step. The first time that I did it, I did no tape at all, and it smudged. The second time that I did it, I only taped the corners, and I had the same problem smudging. It wasn't as bad, but it still smudged. The third time, I learned my lesson, and I taped the whole thing down. So you're going to want to tape it down really, 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 really well. Now, when you first lay it down, it may look kind of light and like it's not going to transfer. But the more you push and work that ink into the wood, the more ink will transfer onto your wood. So you have a couple of different options here. You can grab a squeegee or you can use your fingers. Either way, I use one hand to kind of hold it in place and the other hand to really work that ink in. Now, this one is a little less forgiving than the stencil one, so you'll want to be really careful, move really kind of slowly, and work the ink in while holding the paper itself in place. I spend a lot of time working in this one simply because it's a lot of ink to kind of transfer over, and because I want this to be as legible as possible, I want to work as much ink as possible into the board. So I'm just going to work on this, and in just a minute I'll catch back up with you and let you see how it turned out. Okay friends, so I've been working on really pressing this ink into the board, and I'm ready to kind of see how it turned out. Keep in mind that there are a few different factors that go into how this turned out. Number one, obviously the larger print you have, the more legible it's going to be. Number two, a really good sanding before you do it smooths out the surface better so that the ink applies a little bit better. And number three, a lighter color board is obviously going to give you more contrast, which is going to make your end result pop out a little bit better. But let's just go ahead and see how this turned out. I'm going to very, very slowly and gently lift up my transfer paper. And there you have it. My recipe on my cutting board.
Should the worst case scenario happen and you experience some smudging or your project doesn't turn out exactly how you wanted, my recommendation is to just sand it back down and take another stab at it. Now, because you won't be using this cutting board for food purposes, I usually like to spray on a nice coat of sealant so that it seals the ink and makes sure it doesn't bleed, as well as giving it a nice shine. Well, there you have it, friends. 2 beautiful, personalized, and meaningful gifts that really stretch the dollar this holiday season. If you like this idea, please drop us a comment down below and give us a thumbs up or a like and follow us so that you continue to see great ideas like this. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube. Stick around, we've got bonus content, additional customization options. I'm so glad that you decided to stick around for just a few more minutes because we have some really neat additional customization options to share with you. If you follow the tutorial for customization option number 2, the handwritten recipe, you can use those same steps to scan and build a transfer image from, say, handprints, paw prints, and even your little one's drawings or writings. Now, possibly my new favorite, you can also create a reverse transfer image from a photo and transfer the image directly onto your cutting board right alongside a recipe. Just follow the tutorial for customization option number 2 to flip and print your photo on the correct type of paper, and then you could transfer it right onto your cutting board. Drop us a comment if you have another idea on neat customization options for this crafty Christmas gift. One last tip for this project and some copyright info to wrap things up. I often use the website defont.com to add beautiful and unique fonts to my projects and gifts. Some fonts are free for all uses, but others, like the one used in this video, Lovely Home, are free for personal use only. Because I use this font strictly to make gifts for my family and friends, I can download it and use it freely, courtesy of the author and owner. But should you decide to download a font and use it for commercial uses, you would need to read the fine print in the file and contact the owner of the font for appropriate rights. Happy crafting, friends!